So why don't we do that just so that we can get the review started, and then the actual meeting diligence stuff for us to pass the minutes we'll come back to at the end. So that's what we have on the agenda. We're going to do a review and then an update on the permit and the impact on the project, and then have a discussion around that as a committee. So I'll hand it off to Mark to start with the presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mario. And I believe Lisa has it pulled up here, the presentation. So
can you see it?
We can, and we can hear you right now. There's been some audio quality issues with Lisa, so we're going to do the best we can to listen along. And if it gets to the point where it's inaudible, I will step right in.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So welcome. Great to see everyone. I'm going to skip over a couple slides here while we're waiting for everybody to fill in. But on the overall agenda, there is, when everybody's here, we'll do the approval of the minutes, and we'll talk about the groundbreaking ceremony. But we'll jump right into the heart of the meeting, and that is the permitting timeline and impact to the projects. And I'll go through a couple of fun slides first. We'll go back in a minute. The permitting timeline. So just to kind of frame what we're going to talk about here is we have to apply for permits for the contractor to do their work. And there's different permits that are needed, and talk about which ones we currently have, which ones we are still in pursuit of, and kind of just frame the conversation based on what the schedule was, why it was created the way it was. So Lyseth was the first of the BFOF projects, and I'll do a little history on that. That project was applied for in June 23, 2019, and we received comments on the 15th and responded on the 18th and received our permit on July 23rd. While we were waiting for that permit, we requested a demo permit so the contractor could get started. We requested that on the 26th of June, and that was received on the 28th. We did not need a portable permit for that, so that was about a 4-week process from application to receiving the permit. On Presumpscot, we have actually 3 permits that we have applied for. The first one was the portals. The second one is a foundation, and the third one is the building. We'll walk through that process on each of those. The Presumpscot portable permit was applied for on July 12th. We met with the city on August 10th and exchanged emails in August, and ultimately were made aware that there was a requirement to sprinkler the portables. And at that time, we looked at alternative locations for the students in lieu of the portables. Several options were considered. One was Mackworth Island. One was looking at using smaller portables, and the other was looking at moving students into the building for the duration of construction. And the fourth one was a waiver for the sprinkler requirement based on the portables essentially being existing portables that were being relocated and not there triggering the new construction code, which applies triggers the sprinklers. That waiver was ultimately accepted and approved, and therefore we got the waiver to not have the sprinklers. We resubmitted the portables on the 10th. The waiver came out on the 10th. So we modified the submission and got comments back on the 14th and clarified a couple things over the next couple of days, and then received the permit on the 22nd. So those foundations are in, and those portables are have been taken off of their existing foundations, and I believe if they have not already been relocated, they're very close to being relocated. pause there to see if people have any questions on the portables. I see Laura has her hand up.
Sorry, I was just wondering, do we know now that that permit has been accepted for the portables, when the second graders will be moving into the portables, or back into the portables rather?
That is a great question. I'll have Laura, who's been sort of the master of the portables, if you will, Laura Jolly from the OPM, if you're available, if you want to address that question.
Sure. So we are looking at having the portables wrapped up by the end of next week, and then moving back in over the weekend. So it should be the following week. The kids will be back in those.
So would that be the 8th?
It would be the 8th. Hi,
Okay.
Laura. In the meeting today with Angie, it was agreed that we're on schedule to be in on the 8th, and we're putting a team together to make the move happen. So it's on track for the 8th, and Angie will get back to all you guys in the school.
Okay, super. I was just curious because I know it was, only supposed to be a couple of weeks, and then I think with the permit things, maybe things got pushed back. So I was just looking for a new updated timeline. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Any other questions on this? Not seeing any. We'll move into the Presumpscot building. So this is applied for on July 13th. We had similar meetings with the city on this permit as well. Ultimately, this project, having been submitted after July 1, is required to comply with the city's new stretch code, which is a energy conservation code called IECC 2021. At that time, the state didn't have a way to document compliance because it was so new. So we did some outreach and research, and ultimately arrived that peers within our industry have been applying for compliance using a different form of ComCheck that fell under ASHRAE 90.1 2009, which is a compliance path within that code. We submitted that to the city as a request to show compliance, and that was ultimately approved by the city that would be a way that we could show compliance. We got our comments back on all of the drawings on the site. And at this time, the drawings have been updated, or the code review has been done to understand the impact of IECC 2021. The drawings have been updated. One of the code comments was around plumbing fixture counts, which we are working with the state plumbing inspector and fire marshal to address and provide documentation to the city. And when we have that, we will resubmit those drawings. While we were waiting for that, we submitted there it is. We jumped over the foundation permit. My apologies. We applied for foundation permit. And the reason we did that was so that we can avoid what's called winter conditions, which is where you have to put additives into the concrete and different warming blankets and stuff like that to pour concrete in cold months. We applied for that September 22nd and had received we had meetings with the city first to request that. It has to be requested and approved by the city to be able to apply for it. We got that on the 10th, applied for it on the 22nd. You have to make adjustments to the drawing, so it's just pertaining to the foundation. We received comments on the 6th, responded on the 11th, got more comments on the 15th, responded on the 20th, and ultimately got that permit on October 25th. So that the contractor can move forward with the foundations. So I'm going to pause there before we get into the impact of the project to see if there's any questions. All right, not seeing any. I'll pass it over to Mark.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. And so if we can advance to the next slide. So the impact of the project, whenever we have a delay in the schedule has a couple considerations. One, that it has an impact to the use of the current facility and the intended impact that construction was going to have, and the duration of that construction. So that's one consideration. But there's also cost implications to one, to the respond to some of the items that have been derived through the plan review process for the city. And so the compliance with the stretch energy code that became effective July 1st, these are in addition to what the base design of the building was prior to that. When we had done the building design, we were not designing to the newly enacted stretch energy code. And so that update to the documents requires additional work. That additional work has an additional cost. Those costs are specifically that we had to add some insulation to the building slab itself, and when we say add it, it's increasing the thickness, and so there's heat loss that goes through the slab, the floor slab, and then through the foundation walls. And so the new energy code says that you need to increase the amount of insulation to reduce the heat loss transmitted through those areas. The other one and so those are relatively minor, the insulation additions. The bigger one had to do with the electrical outlets, and that requires now that you can actually switch the electrical outlets in the spaces, and so that means that we've actually got to add circuits, because right now the existing design identifies the outlets as just a standard where they're always powered, and so anything plugged into them always stays powered. So the idea that we have to add switching to them requires more circuits and more cost to run the wire to those outlets, and it requires to modify, add new circuit breakers to the panels. So that right there are some additional costs associated with that stretch code. The other consideration in the schedule mentioned here is that we will have to use the portables for a longer duration than was anticipated. So right now it was intended that we would have the portables through the construction period, and at first we were anticipating that the construction would be done, and that we would be out of those existing portables. Right now, we're not sure what the full schedule is, and so we don't know exactly when we can remove those portables from the Presumpscot site. But so that's one interruption. The other one is that there was potential. I guess we've got the class is temporarily in the gymnasium, which we're dealing with right now. And so those, because it took longer to get the foundation permit for the portables, or get the portable permit, if you will, and get the foundations in. So that meant that we've got temporary classes in the gymnasium longer while we get those foundations poured and get those portables temporarily relocated. That's on this slide. Then we have actual impacts to the contract as well. And I'm trying to think if I don't know where those are on this one. Here we go. So the possible cost impacts, and we'll go back to the previous slide in a minute here, but the possible cost impacts to the schedule, there are several things that the contractor will charge additional funds for. One is for the general conditions, and those are the costs of the contractor to be mobilized on the site and provide supervisory personnel, staffing, and workers. And when there's a delay, they are still incurring cost, even if they're not able to fully be employed in the project. So that's one cost. And the mobilization costs, they're actually on site as well. So then there's subcontractor costs. So in addition to the general contractor having costs due to delay, subcontractors also are entitled to cost if they are being impacted by the delay. And again, we don't know the full impact of any of those right now. And So we're monitoring those with the contractor and trying to keep things moving forward here. The other thing that may be a cost also is if, in order to get back to the schedule, we may have acceleration costs for the contractor. So if there are additional shifts beyond the standard daily shift on evenings or weekends or split shifts, then that's going to cost more money to pay those workers. There are also, as Lisa pointed out, there are possible winter conditions, and so there's certain building systems that require a range of temperatures to install. And when you get into cold weather, it requires that we temper the conditions in the area of the building system installation in order for them to be installed correctly. And that has a cost implication to either provide the heat, having heaters provide that, or cost for other additives to concrete or such. So that's a potential cost with winter conditions. And then just right now, we don't know what the full schedule is, so we don't have a full consideration for what these full costs are going to be. And we'll know better as soon as we get the permits and we can establish the contractor schedule with them, and they will then evaluate what any potential additional costs are. Now we can go back to I think the previous slide, which is kind of what could have been done differently. Now that we're kind of here at this point of the impacts, but and what I'll do is I'll wait for a minute. This is a little different than the costing thing impacts, and so let me just pause for a moment if there are any questions on the material about the cost impacts to the project.
Laura, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
If there are added costs, does that mean we'll have to cut other things from the scope of the project, or how will that added cost be factored in?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. That's a good question. It came up on the previous meeting as well. The question is, where do the funds come from to pay for this? And so right now there's a contingency, as we have talked about before, that construction contingency for that is in the amount of 5% of the construction bid. And if we exceed that amount, and that's going to hold us not just to get off the ground running here, but that has to hold us through the full renovation, because there are going to be things that are unforeseen as we go through the construction. If we exceed that, then we have to look at other areas of the budget that we haven't expended funds for, and look at applying those.
Okay. You mentioned the previous meeting. Does that mean because of the timeline, you said something about the IECC that started July 1? Are Longfellow and Reiki also being held to those same compliance new regulations, or is it just Presumpscot because of the timing of everything?
It's to your latter point. It's actually only the Presumpscot because of the timing of when the permit was applied for after the 1st of July.
Okay.
So the other ones have had cost impacts, but they were primarily issues related to other code interpretation or clarifications that worked through with the code enforcement and Harriman, and in some instances the state through the State Fire Marshal's office.
Okay, and so the holdup really is not holdup, but is really going back to this IECC new regulations. Is that really what's causing the pause and the timeline?
Primarily the pause we have right now is that has one part of it. There are a few other items that I think Lisa covered in that review. One of them having to do with the approach to the number of required plumbing fixtures is another consideration that we're working through as well.
Okay, thanks.
Javier, go ahead.
Can you be specific about what are the impacts of that code?
In terms of the cost, Javier?
Yes.
Laura, do you have, Laura and Jolly, I think has been tracking the itemization of right now what our estimate of these costs are.
We don't know, we don't have a solid number right now because we need to have the contractor price that up. We have put an estimate on it for approximately 75 grand for those code upgrades. And overall, if you want me to talk about overall on Presumpscot, we're looking at about $450,000 for these cost impacts that Mark just mentioned.
The IECC aspect of that is not the big one.
It's a combination of all the various general conditions, subcontractor delays, the winter conditions, but the IECC is, it's a pretty significant portion of it, but it's just a piece of it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll pick up where this slide is, which is what could have been done differently. There's what if we had we identified that the permitting would be as lengthy as it was. What we likely would have done is not. We pushed out the bid period, and so that there would not have been a mobilization of the contractor or award of the contract and mobilization of the contractor, and we would have adjusted the construction schedules accordingly. And so our strategy that we had of phasing the projects about a month apart and applying for the permits assumed the permits would be received within a 4 to 6 week period, similar to what we had seen at LISA. So that's the first thing we would have done differently, is adjusted when we bid the projects and the construction schedules, and applied for the permits about 4 months before the bid. So that's essentially, there was no way to have applied for the permits prior to, because you have to actually complete the design before you apply for the permit. It just would have meant the bid itself would have been pushed out. We also would request a virtual meeting with the code enforcement officer, the plan reviewer from the city of Portland, prior to applying for the permits. Prior to COVID, there was regularly scheduled meetings at City Hall with multiple departments on a project. And they were organized through the planning department, and they would provide an opportunity to present the project and its scope to the code enforcement, as well as the plan reviewer for the fire department. And all of that would occur around a table. That was suspended with COVID. And so I think one of the things that we would have done is to requested a virtual substitution for that, a virtual meeting with certainly the code enforcement. And the last bullet point just is one of the things that we're doing as a result of being delayed is looking at what we call submittals. The contractor is required to submit to us materials and equipment that they're going to put into the project, and we provided a review of that equipment prior to them procuring it. And so what we are doing right now is looking efficiently at how we can continue to make sure that materials and equipment are ready when the contractor needs them, so that construction can progress as efficiently as possible.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, I think we'll, Roberto, do you think we should circle back to minutes and groundbreaking at this time, now that we have more folks on?
Yeah, let's do the minutes so we can, excuse me, so we can get them out of the agenda. So we need to approve the minutes from August 26th. Javier, that's my mom's birthday. That day keeps coming up literally every meeting.
Can we just put that date on everything just to remind you of that?
It's a default date where all of our policies have been revised. So unless there are any questions or any concerns with the minutes, so without any objections, we'll move to approve them. All those indicate, oh, I just realized my camera's off. I'm so sorry. Well, all those indicate, we can just kind of raise our hands to the camera. And like I said, if we don't hear objection, we'll take it as unanimous with folks that are in attendance. Thank you. And so now we're gonna move to the groundbreaking.
We'd like you to do the honors.
Me? Oh, geez. This was, by the way, as Javier said, a post groundbreaking, because there was a huge crater behind us. But this was, what a beautiful day, right? We have beautiful weather. The students were there, which made it really, really special. And we were able to get folks that had been part of this from like literally from day one, like from the 20+ year path that it took to get this approved. So it was a really, really special day. And I think that, despite what we're seeing right now with the permitting and the challenges that we still face, we should find some form of optimism from the fact that this project has continued to persevere despite so many barriers and so many challenges. And it is because of the people that are behind it and what fundamentally is driving this, which is a push to bring learning environments for our students and our families that are conducive to their success. And that desire for us to push equity through our buildings, I think is going to see itself through. I think that we will see this happen, and we will persevere through these challenges. And eventually we're going to have so many pieces in place that overcoming these challenges and these barriers is going to become easier, because every time we find a spot where something happened, we put a system in place. And that's a good way for an organization to function. So when we encounter an issue, we figure out a process and then we go back to it. So again, I'm happy of where we are, but again, acknowledge that there's still challenges ahead of us. So that was kind of my intro, but I really want someone like Javier has some amazing jokes. Maybe he can deliver a punchline or two for us tonight.
I think everybody's heard my tired construction jokes. So I don't think that's I don't think that's going to happen. But I would just echo that. It was a spectacular opportunity. It was great to be there, to see everybody sort of coming together around the reopening, the renovations of the building. I'm sad to think that we weren't able to all be there the way that we would have under normal, circumstances. I was, we were over at Lyseth today for the ribbon cutting, and I remembered, how many people were there for the groundbreaking when we did Lyseth in May of 2019 or 2018, a long time ago, one way or the other, 2.5 years. And it's just unfortunate that we're in this situation where we couldn't have that. I know people would have wanted to come together, but it was awesome. The kids were, amazing. Emily, you were amazing with the kids, and so it was special.
Excellent. Oh, good. Anyone else have anything they want to add about the groundbreaking ceremony? All right. Moving on. next.
And Lisa, you're a bit garbled, but our next scheduled DABC meeting is November 18th. And we right now don't think everyone here wants to be with us during the Thanksgiving day. So we're going to look carefully at what that will mean and figure out a solution to keep everyone informed of what's going on. And so, as was mentioned, we've been through ribbon cutting and groundbreaking for 3 of 4 in this short period of the last days of October here, with the last one being tomorrow, groundbreaking for Longfellow at 1 o'clock. So appreciate all the wonderful sentiments and optimism that is felt through all of those. And we look forward to meeting with you folks again and updating you. And hopefully at that point, we've got a lot more positive news to share.
Great. So with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Did we do the minutes?
Yep. Yep, we did that.
Oh, that's right. They were August 26th.
Yeah. So we'll take a motion to adjourn our meeting. Emily, and second by Laura. With that, and so if there's no objection, we'll adjourn at 7:03 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight, and thank you for the team for your update today. Enjoy the break until after November for us to meet again. Thank you again, Superintendent.